World War II, A Comprehensive History. World War II, a global conflict that lasted from 1939 to 1945, is one of the most significant events in human history. It involved the majority of the world's nations and was marked by major events that reshaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the 20th century. Causes and prelude. The seeds of World War II were sown in the aftermath of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, placed heavy reparations and territorial losses on Germany. The economic hardship and national humiliation contributed to political instability. And the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. In the 1930s, Hitler's aggressive expansionist policies, including the reoccupation of the Rhineland, annexation of Austria, Anschluss, and demands on the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, set the stage for conflict. In Asia, Japan pursued imperial ambitions, invading Manchuria in 1931, and later engaging in a full-scale war with China in 1937. The League of Nations' inability to curb aggression, and the policy of appeasement practiced by Britain and France further emboldened the Axis powers. The outbreak of war. World War II officially began on September 1, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland using blitzkrieg tactics, rapid, coordinated attacks involving infantry, tanks, and air power. Britain and France declared war on Germany on September 3, 1939. Poland fell within weeks, and by 1940, Germany had conquered much of Western Europe, including France, through swift and decisive military campaigns. The Axis powers' expansion. In the early years of the war, the Axis powers, consisting of Germany, Italy, and Japan, experienced significant successes. Germany's invasion of Denmark and Norway in April 1940 secured vital resources and strategic positions. The fall of France in June 1940 led to the establishment of the Vichy regime, which collaborated with the Nazis. In the Mediterranean and North Africa, Italy and Germany aimed to control the Suez Canal and access to oil in the Middle East. In the Balkans, Germany invaded Yugoslavia and Greece in 1941, securing its southern flank before launching Operation Barbarossa. The invasion of the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941. This marked the beginning of a brutal and extensive conflict on the Eastern Front. The war in the Pacific. Meanwhile, Japan expanded its empire across Asia and the Pacific. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States into the war. Japan swiftly captured territories including the Philippines, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Burma, establishing the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. The early victories of the Axis powers were significant, but they also overstretched their resources and supply lines. Turning points. The tide of war began to turn in 1942, in the Pacific. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 was a decisive naval battle that crippled the Japanese fleet and shifted the balance of power. In Europe, the Battle of Stalingrad 19,421,943 was a turning point on the Eastern Front, with the Soviet Union decisively defeating the German Sixth Army. This battle marked the beginning of a relentless Soviet advance westward. In North Africa, the Allied victory at the Second Battle of El Alamein in October-November 1942 halted the Axis advance and paved the way for Operation Torch. The Allied invasion of North Africa. By May 1943, Axis forces in North Africa had surrendered. The Allied offensive. In 1943, the Allies began to gain momentum. The invasion of Italy in July 1943 led to the fall of Mussolini's regime, although German forces continued to resist in Italy until 1945. The Soviet Union launched major offensives, reclaiming lost territories and advancing into Eastern Europe. The Western Allies, including the United States, Britain and Canada prepared for the invasion of Western Europe. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces landed in Normandy, France, establishing a crucial front against Germany. This operation, combined with Soviet advances from the east, forced Germany into a two-front war it could not sustain. The fall of the Axis powers. By 1944, the Axis powers were in retreat on all fronts. The liberation of Paris in August 1944 was a significant milestone in the Western Front. In the east, Soviet forces pushed into Poland, the Baltic states, and Romania. The final months of the war saw intense fighting as the Allies closed in on Germany from all sides. In the Pacific, the United States adopted an island-hopping strategy, capturing key islands and moving closer to Japan. The recapture of the Philippines in 1944 and the Battle of Leyte Gulf were significant Allied victories. In early 1945, Iwo Jima and Okinawa were captured after fierce battles. The end of the war in Europe. The final phase of the war in Europe saw the Allies converging on Berlin. Soviet forces entered the city from the east, while Western Allies crossed the Rhine and advanced from the west. Hitler's suicide on April 30, 1945, marked the collapse of the Nazi regime. On May 7, 1945, Germany unconditionally surrendered, and May 8 was declared victory in Europe VE Day. The end of the war in the Pacific. In the Pacific, the war continued until Japan surrendered in August 1945. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima August 6 and Nagasaki August 9, causing unprecedented devastation and forcing Japan's surrender. On September 2, 1945, Japan formally surrendered aboard the USS Missouri, marking the end of World War II. Aftermath and impact. World War II had profound and far-reaching consequences. The war caused the deaths of an estimated 7,085 million people, including civilians and military personnel. The Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews and millions of other victims were systematically murdered, remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. The geopolitical landscape was dramatically altered. The United Nations was established in 1945 to promote international cooperation and prevent future conflicts. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as superpowers, leading to the Cold War, a period of geopolitical tension and ideological conflict that lasted until the early 1990s. Europe was left devastated, leading to significant economic and political reconstruction efforts. The Marshall Plan, initiated by the United States, provided aid to rebuild European economies. Germany was divided into occupation zones, leading to the eventual establishment of West Germany and East Germany. In Asia, Japan was occupied by Allied forces, and significant political and social reforms were implemented. China emerged from the war weakened by years of conflict, eventually leading to the Chinese Civil War and the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949. Colonial empires began to disintegrate as independence movements gained momentum in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The war also accelerated technological and scientific advancements, including the development of nuclear weapons, radar, and jet engines. World War II was a cataclysmic event that reshaped the world in profound ways. Its causes, major battles, and consequences continue to be studied and remembered as lessons in the importance of international cooperation, the dangers of totalitarianism, and the human capacity for resilience and recovery. The legacy of World War II underscores the need for vigilance in safeguarding peace and justice in the global community.